There are many ways of learning, of course, by looking, by discussing, by doing, and we'll be doing some of each of these in this course. But we'll also be reading quite a bit, as text can offer a remarkably rich and nuanced platform for analysis. As the philosopher René Descartes once wrote, the reading of all good books is like conversation with the finest people of the past centuries. Still, we all know that sometimes reading can feel like a real chore, and that simply making our way through a chapter doesn't mean that we'll retain that information a week or even a day later. So I want to encourage you to read actively, whenever possible. That term can mean various things, but above all it implies an ongoing and dynamic interaction with the text. To start then, think of reading as a conversation, and feel free to stake out your position. Use a pen or a pencil to highlight important or memorable assertions, or to register your reactions in the margins, or with a comment if it's an e-text. Pause occasionally and try to identify the author's intended audience, main points, and evidence. In other words, are they making a successful case in your view, and why or why not? And after you've read, take a few minutes to try to reconstruct the author's case, either in your own mind or in conversation with someone else. You'll likely find, if you do this regularly, that you're more able to retain and to recreate, to deploy, we might say, the readings that you do, both for this class and in the future. But don't just take my word for it. Educational theorists often refer to a model called SQ3R. It's an acronym that alludes to 5 basic steps that can help you in reading actively. The S stands for skim or survey. Before you dive into the reading, skim it, getting a sense of its overall length, structure, and arc. Once you've done that, query. Ask yourself a few basic questions. Who wrote it, and when, and why? What perspective, in other words, is represented here, and in what context might it be meaningful? And then into the first of the 3 R's. Read the piece in a focused way, trying to keep distractions to a minimum, and registering your reactions as you go. Once you've read the piece, try to recall it or remember it. Can you reconstruct the author's line of argument? And finally, review. If you can, return to the piece and read it again, even more slowly, taking notes where helpful and making more refined observations about the structure of the piece, or the author's tone, or their use of evidence. Doing this can really help to solidify your grasp of the material. Ultimately, of course, we all read in our own ways and at our own pace. But reading thoughtfully and intentionally can be remarkably rewarding and can allow you to hold up your end of what Descartes thought of as a meaningful conversation.